can feel overwhelming and hopeless. For so many of us in this country, as we witness those in power bombard us with one despicable, awful thing after another, sometimes we don't even have time to process one thing before the next awful comes around. So it makes a lot of sense that we would feel hopeless right now. But I was talking with my mom the other day, and she said something that I found helpful in processing everything that's been going on. And I thought it also might be helpful to explore that with her today.
Yes, I've been thinking so much lately about all that I have learned from my hospice patients. As a secular chaplain working with patients who were dying, it's interesting that I really learned how to live. And I think it learned how to live and learn to know what is important in very difficult times. And so, one of the things that has been coming to mind lately is how important it was for my hospice patients to deal with reality, to not sugarcoat it, that to be honest about the feelings, to be honest about the reality that was being faced. And so, for instance, I had one hospice patient that would have friends or family come in to visit, and they would say things like, oh, I'm so sorry you're not doing well, or I hear your health is declining. And this particular patient would always say, no, I'm dying. The words are that I'm dying. And so I think it was so important for her to get everybody to name what it is that we are facing. So I think the lesson for us in that is that it's important for us now, those of us of good heart in this country, to name what it is we are facing, to name it as fascism, to name it as racism, to name the abuse of children. It is important for us to be clear-eyed and realistic about what it is that we are dealing with, because the truth is we cannot work through this. We cannot build something better if we are not willing to face the reality of what is in front of us.
Yeah, I think that is so crucial. And I love that you said that because there does seem to be this tendency to kind of try to dance around with the truly awful rather than saying what it is, almost as if by saying it, that is what makes it awful rather than it just being awful in itself. I think we have a responsibility to call that out and call it what it is. Like you said, fascism, racism, the naming of it is not what makes it scary. We can kind of reclaim our power by going ahead and naming it and saying, yes, I see what you're doing. And it is this level of despicable. And that is a way for us to then, like you were saying, Mom, to process it, to know it, and then begin to do something with it.
Another piece that I've been reflecting on lately that seems so important that I learned from my hospice patients was the importance of connecting with those who have gone through it. So for my hospice patients, that might have meant connecting with others who had family members with this same illness, or being part of a group of people who also dealt with this particular disease. And so what I think that can mean for us now in this larger situation in our country is to remember that there are people who have always known the travesties of this country. There are people for whom this country has never been great. Black people, Native people, brown people. There are folks in our country who have always dealt with the lived reality of the despicable things that are happening and have happened in this country. So I think it's so important for us now, if we are new to this realization, if we are new to naming it as such, that we connect with those who have named these things a long time ago and who have continued to work and to journey and to navigate through the difficulties, and who have not given up in the face of the brutal realities. So it's so important that we join with people who already have been dealing with these realities for centuries, really. And so let's connect together, because there are people who are already leading the way and who can teach us how we navigate these types of real lived difficulties.
In knowing that this is not a new thing, that helps everybody because the force of resistance is not starting from ground zero. You're not alone, and we can join with these groups, these communities who can show us the way forward.
Yes, that's so right. And I think this is another piece that I also learned from working with my hospice patients is the need to really stay rooted and grounded in the real love and real joy that can sustain a community. And so I think what we're talking about is, Native communities and Black communities and Brown communities know how that in the midst of the devastation, that the importance of staying rooted in real joy, real love for each other, and real mutual aid and mutual caring for each other and mutual singing together and dancing together in the midst of it all. These are the real sources of sustenance. It's not the superficial wellness trends that keep somebody going in the hard times. It's the real rootedness in what matters, in the care for each other, sharing the sorrows, of course, together, but also sharing the joys. And so what we can learn is that we can sustain each other through the difficulty, because it may be difficult for quite a long time. And I think the minority communities that have been dealing with these issues for so long. No, this is not a journey that ends in a week or a month or even a year. That these are things that go on and sometimes take a lifetime. It really does help us move towards something new, towards something better. And it is really the only way.
What a joy it is to know this, not in your last few weeks of life, but to know that now. And to take pieces of what these communities have known for centuries, and that real nourishment comes from finding grounded joy together and not some kind of quick fix. How lucky we are to know that and learn that now, rather than finding out what truly matters at the end. All of this reminds me of something I've heard you say again and again, which is that this tough chapter is not the end of the story. The larger story will go on, and it doesn't stop here.
Yes. That's something else that I really learned by working with my hospice patients. Because you think about, well, maybe this patient, you think, well, they're dying. It is the end of their story. But the truth is, it's not. And that's what my hospice patients would tell me again and again. The story goes on. The relationships they had, the work they had done in the community, the things that they leave behind, their story would go on. And I think that is such an important notion to remember in this time as well. This is a chapter that we are living through. This is not the end of the story. We, as a matter of fact, can be involved in fashioning the next chapter. And I think that's so important too, to remember that, things that feel so bad in the moment, that we are part of such a long history. And it has been a history of travesties in many, many ways. And we have continued to work. There have continued to be small improvements along the way. And then every once in a while, there's a big improvement. And then there may be some small things. And so what we do is we work together in community to build the next chapter, to bring about the next part of the story. What is real and true right now can be something different in the next chapter. And so I think that's so important to remember when we do begin to maybe feel some despair. There is the hope of newness. There is the hope of something different. And it matters that we are all part of building that different together.
What an amazing perspective to have the chance to zoom out and see that we are a small piece of what has been a narrative stretching on for centuries into the past and will continue to stretch on for centuries into the future. And it's not to take away from what feels awful right now, but to know that it will continue on and that we can play what role we can in our spheres of influence to write the next chapter together.
And so, one of the things that I think can be helpful for us all in this moment, too, is to get involved locally, wherever we are. Every community has somebody doing the work or some organization who is already working to help people along these issues. And so, to go ahead and find these people, find these organizations, and get involved, donate time, find out what help they need, because it's such a wonderful opportunity for all of us to get involved with it and to support this work any way we can.
This has been such a special conversation, and I feel like this is the stuff of sustenance that can keep us going and keep us walking and writing the next chapter together. Thank you everybody for watching. I would love to hear how this resonated with you. Please leave your thoughts in the comments. My name is Michelle, that's my mom Ashley, and we will connect again with you soon.